Oh, wow. Look, I even got the "You Are Live" message right away.
A first.
That means it's a first. I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Playaz, and for the second week in a row, we're doing a show, and it's not even Thursday. What's going on here?
Something wrong, obviously. You know, I wish these vendors would be a little more accommodating and just schedule their conferences for Thursdays.
Yeah, but since they haven't just yet, it's the first watch party of the year for the CRM Playaz. It is the Adobe Summit Keynote, and yeah, we'll see what happens. But we do have a cast of thousands that'll help us watch. Whoa. Looks like we're going to the tunnel with Rebecca because we're hearing a whole lot of sound there, Rebecca.
Literally sounds like a wind tunnel.
Yeah. We're going to put you.
Hi.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll put you on back in the green room, and we'll check with Nicole.
There she is.
I gotta unmute myself. Hey.
Good day, ma'am.
Speaking of hey, Sven says hedge.
Hedge.
Yeah, there you go.
It's hey.
And there, we'll say Hage to Anand Tucker.
And Hage to everyone else.
All right.
Hedging gracefully.
Yeah, we are. Okay, so I got to keep an eye on things. So I'm going to do a quick check to see what's going on, see if they've started. Nope, they haven't started yet.
I see. I'm seeing it running though. I've got
the speech.
Yeah, I've got the keynote going.
Really? Let me do this then.
Do a little refresh.
Let me do a refresh on the.
Boy, we're gonna have to move into action quick.
I know we're onto a video. Shantanu was talking, but
all right. So I'm just gonna take myself out of the picture, and we're gonna go to the keynote right now because I think we have it. Let me give you some sound here.
No sound.
You're not getting any sound?
Nope.
Oh, hold on a second.
There you go.
Loud. Too loud?
Yeah.
Thank you, Shantanu. It truly is an incredible journey we've all been on over the past
Still too
year.
loud?
No.
And our thoughts remain with everyone affected by the global pandemic. Welcome. And thank you for joining us and your peers in the global Adobe community. I also want to offer a warm welcome to our Workfront customers and partners. You'll hear much more about what the combination of Adobe and Workfront can do for you as part of Summit. Our integration is off to a fast start, and we're excited about what is ahead. As part of this keynote, you'll hear from world-class brands that have successfully navigated the past year, including Pfizer, FedEx, and many more. And we'll be joined by arguably the greatest female tennis player and one of the greatest athletes in history, Serena Williams, who is a successful entrepreneur, investor, and designer,
We'll do
and a global brand.
snarky commentary on
We
Serena
will share
Williams.
the latest innovations.
I was going to say, at least it's a little less hostage video this time, so we're not like locked into some background in the living room somewhere,
Spread over Summit.
He's at least got the whole office to himself.
Available.
They must have heard your comments.
And don't miss the more than 100 customer success stories, many of which are in collaboration with our valued partner community participating in Summit.
That's a pretty hefty
Summit
keynote.
Be complete without the always entertaining sneak session. Our host, the hilarious Dan Levy, along with our own team, will give you an exclusive and fun peek into some of the ideas and innovations
really looking forward to
being developed in our research. Finally, there'll be many opportunities to connect directly with your peers during the event. With that, let's get into it. As Shantanu discussed, the past year has been unprecedented in so many ways. While the path forward is still being shaped, we know we'll be living and working in a new normal. For our Adobe Experience Cloud business as an example, nearly every day over the past year has felt like Black Friday. And I'm sure many of you have seen the exact same thing. As we have worked closely with our customers during this time,
Only even how much
we've
money
been
I'm
inspired
spending.
by amazing examples of resiliency and ingenuity.
I wonder how
To
many
survive
new
and
generation
thrive,
folks actually know the
every
reference to Black
business
Friday.
has had to
I
rapidly
don't know. I mean, it's so
accelerate
funny if you have
transformation.
never actually seen lines of
Indeed,
people standing outside a
digital
shop.
has become the way
It's like
for
how
people to
you know,
connect,
these
work, learn, and be
colloquialisms get
entertained.
adopted and people have no
The
idea
digital
what they
economy
actually mean. They just know them in
runs on
context.
customer connection.
That's right.
In this environment, customers rightfully expect engaging, personalized digital experiences delivered to them in real time in a way that also respects their privacy and delivers value. And brands that are putting a laser focus on customer experience management are coming out in front. Simply put, customer personalization done right drives business growth. To make this a reality for their customers, marketers must seamlessly connect each step of the experience they deliver across every interaction in the customer journey. Content is the fuel here, and real-time personalization leveraging AI and machine learning is critical. Marketers must do this while navigating a brave new world.
I'm going to be a little
third-party cookies
contrarian
are
here
quickly
because as I'm
becoming a
listening
thing
to
of the
this, I
past.
can't help but
Yet, where the
question.
insights derived from first-party
Personalization
data
drives
have never
growth.
been more important. All
Well,
while
I feel
paying
like
close
it's
attention
a
to the
factor
privacy
if you
expectations of
consider
their consumers around the
personalization to
world.
be
Indeed,
understanding what your
challenges are
individual
significant.
customers'
The
priorities are
reward
and matching up
is a true
a set
digital
of interactions and
transformation of
propositions for
your
them.
business.
Okay,
Now
but
more than ever,
It's,
I feel like
Adobe
it's a
is here.
little more than that.
We deeply value
it's a
your
lot more
partnership
than that.
and
But
trust to power
the
your
other
vision.
side is, I'm going to give them some
And that's what
leeway here, but
motivates us to continue to
this
build
is a
on
really
the next
old
generation
message.
platform for
Right.
customer
I mean, it's
experience.
a message that's been around for like
As
5
Shantanu
years so
mentioned,
far. But
It
so,
this
doesn't
is
mean
Adobe
anybody's getting it
Experience
right though, Paul. That's
comprehensive set
yeah,
of
I know,
hard
but
thing,
you know,
though.
content and commerce,
there's
data
a lot
insights
of
and
new, let's
audiences,
say,
customer
ultimately
journey,
we're trying
and
to
marketing
separate
workflow.
signal from
These
signal
applications
now,
are delivered
as
on an
opposed to signal
integrated
from
platform,
noise.
Adobe Experience
So,
Platform, or
you know,
AEP,
and
which helps our
the
customers
reality
deliver
is
real-time
there's a
personalization
reason
at
why from the
scale
last
with
year, for
over
example, and that's
17
why I'm saying we're
trillion
giving them a little more
segment
leeway is
valuation per day.
there's a reason why
AEP
empathy
is
became a
built on
big
a
deal over the
modular,
last year.
services-based
Things like
architecture,
that, which is,
leveraging
you know, and
Adobe
you're going
Sensor,
past
our
personalization at
state-of-the-art
that point
machine
too, to
learning AI.
humanization, if you want to call it
With
anything.
Adobe Experience Cloud,
Yeah.
we're
But
focused on providing you the best of both worlds. Most comprehensive set of applications for
again,
CXM
give me some
integrated
slack.
onto a common cloud scale platform. And with the addition of Adobe Workfront, we will provide you greater efficiency and agility in executing and optimizing your campaigns as we deliver an industry-leading marketing system of record. Over the last year, our product team has done a tremendous job of developing new applications and services on our platform and introducing innovations across our entire portfolio. I also want to recognize our extensive global ecosystem of over 4,200 active partners, from system integrators and agencies to our large community of technology partners and developers, all of whom are working closely with us to extend these capabilities and enable these advancements to come to life in your environment. Now, let me highlight some of these key innovations. AEP is at the heart of Adobe Experience Cloud, and we have designed it from the ground up to help you deliver personalized experiences with speed and at scale. And I'm excited to announce AEP Collection Enterprise, which shifts client-side tagging
So we're
implementations.
using AEP
Adobe
as
Suite.
as an acronym
This
here because we have to
simplifies
add a lot of other words to
data
explain
routing
the different
and
pieces of
faster
it. Is that
website
what's
loading.
happening?
And as I mentioned, we
I
all know that
they've
third-party
they've started to use that about a year ago,
to help you
and it
manage this
really
change.
it's not really
We're
built from the
announcing
ground up, but
Segment Match,
they have
where
innovated well with
multiple
it. But
companies can
I'm
form
pretty much,
strategic
what can you
partnerships
do? You need an
to enrich
acronym. I got
matching
one.
Yeah,
first-party profiles.
they've
in line
certainly
with
used it.
customer
Like it's very
This
common
helps you build
amongst a lot
better
of
customer
practitioners who
understanding
are
while
using it.
respecting
So,
customer privacy
or even
and
in
personal
RFPs, they're looking at them and it'll say
2 years ago
AEP.
at
They
this
don't really
event,
get into the
we
details
introduced
about what
our
it comprises
real-time
of or how it's
data platform.
connected.
Built
Just
on AEP,
here's our
it's
platform.
the
This is what we're looking
only
for.
enterprise app
That's a fair
architected
question,
from the
though.
ground up for
It's interesting. I
first-party,
do think, if you go
data-driven
back to that
customer
slide that he
acquisition and
showed
engagement.
earlier, I think it's a big step
It
in the
helps
right
you
direction
activate
for Adobe
known
to try to
and unknown
rationalize the
customer data,
portfolio and make
manage
sense
the
of it
entire
all
customer
together.
profile and journey
But
seamlessly
it
in
still is
one
very
system,
Adobe
preparing
out
your
as
brand
opposed
to win in a
to,
cookieless future.
what
Today,
are businesses
I'm
using?
thrilled
What are the
to
tools they
announce
need? How do they fit
beta
together
availability of the
outside in?
B2B edition of
So
Adobe
hopefully they
Real-Time
get to
Sales.
that in the next
Now,
iteration.
enterprises can unite both individual and account profiles for complete intelligence and activation. You can view and act on unified account details, attributes, people,
It's a
opportunities, and
CDP.
more in a way that's consistent with user permissions. And if you're already using Adobe
Interesting that he's
Marketer
taken a
Engage,
B2B approach to that
integration
conversation.
with B2B CDP is pre-built. When it comes to collecting and analyzing customer experience data, Adobe Analytics has been at the core of many of your systems.
There's a bigger conversation there because I think the challenge, yes, in B2B, you do need to pull all this data together and to do it in a different construct.
And offline
I feel like
the unified views.
What's helpful is more having that sense of a construct that relates individuals to organizations on both sides, and how you're interacting with them, as opposed to the real-time aspect, but they still have real-time in the title of the B2B. It's like alphabet soup in the extreme.
Today's customer journeys are incredibly varied and dynamic.
They're doing, which
reality is your customer can and will choose their own
a relatively complete platform, and they really, for what it is, and that's their credit. I mean, the thing that they historically tend to do is get very product-focused about it, and which kind of goes against the actual grain of what they're building. But
natively on AEP, it is tailor-made for marketers to manage the customer journey.
Taking elements that they haven't had and layers and elements they haven't had, and beginning to add them. I know. I mean, I've looked at a couple of these already, and I mean, look. Ultimately, if I see Journey Optimizer, Journey Analytics, I'm going to Thunderhead in a heartbeat because to me it's the best of class in the industry. But
in a single
these are kind of.
In addition, I also want to highlight exciting new integration between Adobe Marketing Engage and Adobe Sign.
Capable.
As a result, we're making it easier than ever.
Quotes around that, but nonetheless capable. Meaning they're not unusable. They're not. Most of them are
now more than ever
historically
delivering amazing customer experiences requires
substance,
the right content,
but it's
the right
still a little
place,
bit on the linear side.
And we're introducing several innovations in our flagship application, Adobe Experience Manager, to help you create, manage, and optimize the content your digital business requires and at the velocity you need. AEM now
I will continue to say that my beef is that you're managing content. You're not managing experiences. Why are you calling it experience manager?
Including support.
By the way, for those who don't actually know what headless means, because it's like, its term kind of just showed up. Basically says, I mean, just oversimplify it, the back end without the front end and an API too. Right. I mean, that's pretty much what headless means.
Right.
That's just for the audience, just in case. Because
very flexible architecture requires a different approach to how you work, especially across teams that need to support each other.
I used to think it was just a novel with Washington Irving, by Washington Irving.
Today, I'm pleased to announce that
the Horseman,
available.
Wait till someone starts talking about that with horses in the background, then then that joke will just be.
Don't worry,
there's a good one
there. And the Ichabod Crane will
horsepower of headless. Yeah, the horsepower of headless content management or something along those lines.
I'm waiting for that to come out.
Do you remember the era of composite apps?
To help both B2C.
Yes, just barely. Yeah.
Well, that was the primitive headless, right? Basically. But it had a head, so to speak, but you chose the head you wanted. And the back end was all the other apps in one place that you can utilize. It kind of pulled all the data from the apps. You could utilize the app, and you could literally give it the front end you wanted, whatever it was. And typically, it was the front end of one of the apps you were using. So you could have PeopleSoft, SAP, Oracle, and Salesforce in one place. You decide you want the Salesforce front end, pulling data from all the other ones, you could use that. So it's kind of the predecessor for this. It's kind of the primitive version of what we're seeing now, but the problem it had was it failed
with Adobe Commerce
as a market. Complete failure.
Well, it's tough because you need critical mass of this stuff, right? I mean, we're talking about a big set of architectural changes, and you have to have it widespread enough that it actually makes sense to operate in that new model. And I think we're finally getting there on the critical mass.
Well, I think the two places the headless market is kind of showing itself is CMS and commerce. Right, and I know CMS, you have Contentful and Sanify and some of the other ones, but I don't know a lot about the headless commerce side yet. I'm just sort of looking into it now, but it's showing up a lot.
Increasing pace of digital business, marketers are tasked with delivering personalized customer experiences.
It does raise some interesting challenges though, because you have to know what you're doing to use these tools well. It's not like GoDaddy or something like that. You just have a nice template and you fill it in with content. It's way at the other end of the spectrum, and you really have to have a sense of how you want to design
Cloud and marketing
the whole experience, and you can separate the structure of that from the actual content going in, but it does require, I think, a high degree of creative thinking as well as some technical ability to make it happen. It's not quite as onerous because in the headless model, you don't need to rely on developers to make content changes, which is the whole appeal. But it does require, I think, a different framework for thinking about what you're designing, whether you're in the development team or in the sort of creative and digital builder team. So something certainly I'm really interested in learning more about how businesses are starting to tackle and change the way they operate and change the way they think about what the skills are that they need in those teams and how those teams work together.
So that last part, I know they're just kind of showing some screens here. I kind of wanted to give folks like an opportunity to hear a little bit of this, but the end there was about the system of record. And, there's a lot of conversation about that, which everyone wants to try to own that. And I feel like this is something Adobe's been going after, where it's been siloed engagement, by different avenues to your customers. And now they want to try to bring this back into, okay, let's talk from a central repository, a central asset that you have in terms of the engagement with your customers, and then kind of push for their way back. So I know this has changed. This feels like it's changed over the last 5 years in terms of their temperament. They certainly talk about it when it's reactive, but now this is a more proactive take on a lot of that.
It really is a pleasure to welcome to Adobe Summit my friend, the chairman and CEO of Pfizer, Albert Bourla. Pfizer has done more to deal with the pandemic.
I was going to say timely.
Really smart.
Clearly the driving force behind making the impossible possible. Thank you for joining us today, Albert.
Shantanu, thank you so much for having me. And it is not only a great pleasure, but a great honor to speak with you, my good friend, but also to speak in the audience of a company like Adobe that I admire.
Let's start with when you first heard about COVID-19 and what your reaction was at that point.
Well, like every one of us, we first heard it in China, and we all felt that it is a Chinese problem in the beginning. The difference maybe with us was that we had very large operations in China. So I had thousands of people there. We had manufacturing sites there. We have research sites there. So I was very concerned. And I was concerned for, number one, the safety of our people there and what needs to be done. And then eventually also how the business will evolve, given everything that we are listening. It was really towards the end of February that I realized that this is going to be big all over the world. I remember writing down 3 priorities that I wanted to speak with my team the next day. And the first was the safety of 90,000 people that are working for us, like every other company. But then 2 other things. The second was how to make sure that we will continue bringing the medicines that people need during the pandemic. And I was mainly concerned about hospitals, because we knew that hospitals will be overcrowded. And the third that I wrote, what can we do to provide a medical solution? And in my mind, the first one was treatment. And it was within a week that also I realized that likely a vaccine is what's needed. And this is when we came with the idea that we must be heavily involved in developing a COVID-19 vaccine.
That was amazing. Clearly, crises create opportunities to make a significant difference. Tell us a little bit about developing this vaccine in what was absolutely record time.
It was an impossible task. And every time that you are in front of impossible tasks, you need to think completely differently. And you need to think in very, very different ways of how you're going to perform everything that needs to be performed to come to the end. But even the most important of all, you must believe it. And not only you must believe it at the top, you must cascade this belief all the way down to every single person that is working. Because to make the impossible possible, you need to have thousands of people believing that they can do it. And I think that was the most challenging of all, how to make sure that we all believe that this can be done. And it was a glorious demonstration that people never know what they can and they cannot do.
We touched on the what, but maybe, Albert, can you speak to the role that Pfizer's values, courage, excellence, equity, and joy, and culture as a whole played in making the seemingly impossible breakthrough possible?
Let me start by saying, luck never comes to the unprepared. And this company was preparing for this moment. We knew that we are preparing the company to be able to be breakthroughs that could change patients' lives. And we did that not only in terms of cultural changes, but also in terms of the whole company changes, a huge transformation of Pfizer. We started that in 2019, and we significantly increased the investments in digital and research in this company. But we all know that you can't transform a company by changing the business portfolio or by changing the capital allocation. You can only transform it by changing the culture of the company. And the 4 values that you mentioned were the ones that help us achieve what we achieved. Imagine, for example, if we didn't have the courage to think big. We didn't ask them to manufacture 200 million doses, which would have been a monumental task. We asked them to manufacture 3 billion doses. That's what I mean, think big. And then they found solutions, and they did both. They will manufacture that much. And they did it in 9 months. Imagine if we didn't have the courage to make tough decisions to go for mRNA platform to start with. And I can go on and on. The joy that you mentioned. The joy is not only having fun. Joy is the pride that you can take when you belong to a group that is serving the greater good. And the pride that people took that they can save the world by excelling in what they are doing was what they drove them not only to work day and night, but to be very creative. So yes, Andrew, it was the culture that brought this vaccine.
You touched on pride, Albert, and I certainly wear my Science Will Win t-shirt with a lot of pride. But you also launched a corporate campaign last year, touching on Science Will Win, which is clearly proving to be the case. Maybe you can touch on what role digital specifically has played in achieving this notion of science will win.
Let's remember that at Pfizer, January 1st, I was appointed as CEO. The same day, we appointed a new chief digital officer. And that was the first signal that I sent to the organization that digital is going to be the most important transformation that we need to do here in Pfizer. And during all these 18 months, the first goal that the chief digital officer received was to digitize our discovery and development process of medicines. For example, usually we need 4 weeks to do some very specific processes in formulating the vaccines. By using advanced analytics in these particular vaccines and a supercomputing platform, we were able to do it in 18 hours.
This is super interesting stuff. I mean, it's not exactly in Adobe's wheelhouse, but it's super interesting.
It's very interesting. I'm not sure what it has to do with Adobe.
It was ready for submission to the FDA. Without digital,
is the analytics part the Adobe piece?
I don't think this was Adobe Analytics at work here. I think it was other analytics.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working with a pretty well-known hospital in their digital kind of efforts just on the side, and it's happenstance.
What drove that decision?
That analytics is remarkable, right? It does require supercomputers to do that, not just the cloud. I mean, it's just not enough, right? Maybe it's the collaboration. Hopefully, he speaks to that, perhaps. Or
was way more.
I thought his point about creativity was interesting. I mean, that ties in really nicely with all the stuff that Scott Belsky talks about in Creative Cloud, but it kind of glossed right over that part.
In vaccine.
So, what did he talk about? Was it creative in the sense of content and how to engage, or are we talking about science?
Everybody being creative and thinking creatively, which is a big part of the message. You know, creativity for all is kind of the big message from Creative Cloud, which I think has huge resonance and does apply even to people who aren't using Adobe's creative tools.
I admire you so much for what you do, but you are very consistent and you plan not to let them down.
Yeah, particularly, you know, with the no-code movement, helping people create without really having to worry about being in digital creating without having to worry about the technical backdrop or background.
Breakthroughs that change patients' lives.
Trivia tidbit from one of my colleagues, by the way. Apparently, this guy from Pfizer is a veterinarian.
And
yes, he is.
very well documented.
Which is cool. There's a lot of innovation going on in veterinary care as well. But
they perform way better than corporations that they don't. And the thing that makes the big difference is that when you stay true to your purpose, you give a very good compass, a very good guidance to the people where we go. And the whole organization is aligned to go there. But when your purpose is also so noble, as in our case, when your success is going to affect human lives, is going to affect if a father will live long enough to see his daughter getting married.
I wonder if they're going to have an ode to Mr. Geschke from one of the co-founders of Adobe, because he has a lot of the similar mindsets when he started Adobe a long time ago when he was working at it slipped my mind, where was he at the time? Xerox. So he kind of left Xerox saying, you know what, I just want to be a nerd and feel comfortable like being in my skin and go build really cool stuff. And
we like to do
is market those innovations.
Yeah.
So I will give you one word, and I'd love for you to respond with the first word that comes to mind. I'll start off with the word 2020.
Excitement.
Greece.
Nostalgia.
COVID.
Threat.
Science.
Hope.
Digital.
Enabler.
Pfizer.
My life.
Albert Bourla.
A good father.
That was absolutely fantastic, Albert. Thank you again so much for joining us today.
It was a great, great pleasure. And again, my admiration for what Adobe is doing all these years.
I like the way he says Adobe.
Thank you, Shantanu and Albert. Such an informative and certainly timely conversation. At a time when digital has never been more important, how Pfizer and other companies combating the pandemic are working to transform and best serve customers is so inspiring and also much appreciated. Let's turn attention now to a company that has navigated the pandemic well and continued to innovate over the past year. Deborah Wall is Global CMO of General Motors. Since business began to open back up, GM has done impressive work and also has a compelling vision to go all electric. Let's hear from Deborah.
Agreed,
Right,
Christy.
He is.
Absolutely.
Global mobility is transforming. Our goal at General Motors is to make that transformation work for everyone. And personalization is the key, because personalization provides an opportunity to have our products adapt to meet the diverse needs of a global customer base, making sure everyone is seen and included. 4 years ago, GM unveiled its vision of a world with zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion. The vision starts within, with the reorientation of our workforce and our investments to create the technologies and build the platforms needed to deliver on a vision of this scale. But we're also working together with suppliers, partners, investors, dealers, entrepreneurs, governments to reinvent the entire mobility ecosystem so that everyone can thrive. The focus of much of our recent public work—
It's hard to follow Pfizer.
Transportation is the largest single contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. That's why General Motors announced its aspiration to phase out gas and diesel engines from all light-duty vehicles by 2035, on a journey to achieve our goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2040, and to help lead the industry into the net zero.
Save the race, now save the planet.
By 2050. To make this possible, we've been building the platforms that will power the electric vehicle experiences of the future. Ultium is the world's first electric vehicle battery platform with the power to make any vehicle an electric vehicle. It uses a combination of groundbreaking battery architecture, highly flexible electric propulsion systems, and a common high-energy battery cell that will power
this is
an entire
fascinating,
range
but
of
I'd love to hear what this
next-generation
has to do with
electric vehicles.
Adobe.
Ultium is
Well,
expected to help
I
reduce
think
battery
they'd
costs,
probably go,
increase
judging from what I'm
range,
hearing from the
accelerate
two,
charging,
They're going for inspiration rather than connection.
30 new
and that's fine. I mean, it's actually not a really, in a certain way, it's not a bad approach, really, because they're basically, think about it, two things. One is we're seeing the good that each of the companies did, and again, it's hard to follow Pfizer and show you're doing anything all that good, but by comparison. But that said,
EV ambitions by allowing drivers and passengers to personalize their mobility experience
by saying we have customers who are groundbreakers and doing good in the world, right? And if you're looking at 2021, it's a pretty smart way to think about things. Because again, it goes to what we were saying a little bit earlier, empathy. We're looking at things like that, and it goes to kind of thematically what people are looking for. Now at this point in the pandemic, and as we start to come out, so it's okay from, at least personally, I don't have any problem with the fact that they're not connected to Adobe. Think of it this way.
Platforms like OnStar and BrightDrop.
And no disrespect intended to these other two companies I'm mentioning, but think when SAP did Porsche and Salesforce did Bentley.
We don't believe
all right, and then compare this
excellent point
and Pfizer.
Since Harley Earl, the company's first lead designer,
I hope they tie it together with the leadership
dominate our industry to this day. And thanks to his pioneering efforts, GM vehicles have set the
She had a remarkable job
in
front of her, in the face of the changing automotive landscape.
Personalization.
I actually have heard a fair amount about her, and she's apparently terrific at what she does.
Experiences that surprise and delight drivers. Experiences that leverage electric.
This still feels a little closer.
Gas and diesel vehicles cannot do.
Adobe does believe in experiences and talks about personalization, and this is kind of an extension of that to some degree.
And personal well-being.
I'd still love to see just one mention of what area they both are working on that's very specific to that. It doesn't have to be, hey, we use this tool to this, project. Maybe some of that isn't even, I know Adobe works on various projects that they really can't speak to because it provides a competitive advantage when they work on those particular initiatives. But something just to give us a little more taste.
Introduce ourselves to mainstream audiences and challenge EV perceptions, setting our consumer brands up for success.
That's a great commercial.
As they bring these exciting and unique EV models to market.
That's
the mission to put everybody in an EV. And as we look to reinvent our relationship with customers and redefine the entire customer journey, we've been able to learn from Adobe and its own journey to reinvent itself as a best-in-world platform experience. As a marketing team, we are embracing Adobe as a way to reconcile customer identity across a range of environments and to take context-driven actions at the appropriate time, training our teams to leverage the best of Adobe's platform experiences to create our own best-in-world experiences. We have a complex customer life cycle, with most searches starting online and ending with fulfillment at a local dealer, passing through category education, brand consideration, and vehicle consideration before a customer arrives at their purchase decision. Our dealers are independent franchises, but they are also a major strategic advantage for General Motors. They live in the communities and they know the needs of their customers firsthand. Being able to integrate them into our digital journey makes the process easier for customers and avoids drop-off at the point of handover. And Adobe is helping us bring that to life using AI and machine learning to seamlessly engage customers and address their needs across multiple environments, even in a cookieless world. So we can walk with customers.
The cookieless reference works right in there. You don't need cookies if you've got first party. Anyway.
The reassurance that comes from being inside our own vehicles will be more important than ever. Personal well-being and personal safety will be more important than ever, but also a desire for celebration and self-expression as we re-enter the world. We intend to meet that moment as we've met so many moments before, by making those opportunities available to everyone. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the summit.
I was literally going to say this is getting a little long right there.
Yeah, there you go. I do like the connection, though, between products and product experiences and the digital experiences, too, because I think we're increasingly at a point where you have to manage the digital products, whether or not that's exactly what you're selling.
Yeah.
on par with the way you manage your tangible products.
Well, and that's Adobe. It's one of Adobe's great strengths too on that side. If you remember, Experience Manager started out as it wasn't really an experience manager; it was a digital asset
content manager or an asset manager.
Digital asset manager. It was a good one, and it was you could do cool stuff with it, but it was not. It didn't do anything experiential, particularly.
From the great Serena Williams.
Oh, they really did work her into the keynote.
There's a lot of things that I take from my tennis career that I incorporate into business with just tenacity and the desire and the championship mindset. I'm Serena Williams. I'm a professional tennis player, and I'm also a venture capitalist, and I own a fashion company. From day one, I just always remember my dad. He would always say, you never know, anything can happen in your life, and you want to always have something to fall back on. So that was obviously something that was instilled in me from a super early age. You know, what I'm doing in fashion, what I do at Serena Ventures is something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and I've wanted it to be a full-time occupation as opposed to just a backup plan. It's some things that I'm passionate about. So I became an angel investor early on, and I've been investing for over 8 years now in different companies, and I quickly learned that angel investing is fun, but it is very risky. So I started investing in funds, and through the funds, I met different founders. And
we're not going to get to SPACs here, are we?
I learned that less than 2% of VC money was going to women, and I saw that even less was invested in people of color and women of color. And I thought, oh my goodness, is that for real? Is this a joke?
So we've gone from health to environment to DEI now.
Writing the checks,
covering it all, covering all the bases
to women and to people of color. And if that doesn't happen, then the same money is going to be going to the same places. My tennis career really influences my business career in terms of the dedication and the hard work I already know that goes into it, and the hunger that you need to be good. Remaining conservative versus risk in tennis is easy because it's like the more risk you take, the better reward you have. And you also have a second chance. It's like, okay, it's usually not the end of the match. It's usually not a lasting thing. Business is a little bit different because we're talking a tremendous amount of funds and money that we're handling. And so we want to make sure I make the best decision. Good job. I'm proud of you. But just make sure when you talk to them, you just let them know what we're looking for, and maybe we have to raise our minimums because I know a lot of people are trying to get in. And business, measuring success is the same way I would measure success in tennis. I have goals that I want to reach, and if I meet those goals, then I feel like, yeah, I have success in that. And there's often times that we don't reach those goals and we don't reach the minimums that we want to do. And so for us, it's really just about reevaluating that and then trying to figure out how to do better. All right. Well, that sounds good. Let me know how it goes. And if I
actually agree with Christy,
just send me a message.
Yeah.
And I will be on. Okay, great. Okay, bye. The most important trait in a leader is ownership.
I do think, that's it's one of the things that you get at Summit in person when you have a lot of these people on stage is you do get that energy and that inspiration.
And come up with big ideas.
I think the energy level is not on par on the video version, unfortunately.
No.
It's both in business and
Well,
tennis.
the challenge is really capturing the energy.
Our founders,
their talent is being, as a company on the other side of it, is being cinematic. They're really good at it normally, but they're not, for some reason, they're not being that, right? They're just basically, these are 4 or so pre-taped presentations.
I have like my coach,
that
and I have a different
there's
team.
no, let's say this, they are inspirational. I think I like the approach, and we'll get into it more, I'm sure, post, but I like the approach that they're taking with that. But it's just 4 or 5 videos.
Approach. So I've taken a risk where I didn't particularly know much about the company. I didn't
let's say
know much about
it's
the
inspiring
values.
and interesting, but not terribly engaging.
And they're each about 2 minutes too long, and they could be broken up around themes and mixed in an interesting way that would show off Adobe's chops too.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm glad for the inspiration. It's the thinking behind it.
I'm going to leave this all in your
It's a keynote, sets a tone. That's the actual idea of a keynote. Really sets a tone and a theme, and their tone and their theme, or the tone, I guess. Actually, a theme, I guess, is inspire, right? Really, not what the other three things they had: engage, blah 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 blah, whatever it was, but inspire. That said, the tone isn't really deeply engaging. It's just
together is something that is really
but it's good to hear what they're saying. I guess that's kind of what it's like.
A good one to have.
I'm still looking forward to Dan Levy.
But he's awesome. I love that. I love that show.
I do too. Tell us how he's using Adobe to support his glasses brand, which has some awesome stuff. Yeah.
And I'm sure somebody will come on and imitate Alexa and go.
It's so important to create something that works.
Right. I'm sure that'll happen at some point.
I'm not.
Always does.
A girl that's super thin, and I feel like I've always wanted people to be represented in every way. So we call it great.
Yeah, it's interesting, Paul, what you were saying about Adobe normally being very good at using the video medium, but it's interesting because normally it's an interstitial as part of what they're doing in a live show. And I guess it's just, a great example of how producing a live event versus producing a video and particularly a pre-recorded event and not necessarily a live one is totally different medium.
What's ironic? It's ironic, really, because
giving back in a way.
Well, it's what Don Sherman said a year and a half ago that Brent and I repeated at least 20,000 times, which is, when you're live, you're theatrical, right? You have to be theatrical. But as he put it then, he said, now that we're moving into a virtual environment, we have to go from being theatrical to cinematic.
Yeah.
And because we're watching a screen. It's a movie. It's a TV show. It's not a live event. They're different. And the impact emotionally and the impact on your on what it triggers are just different. And they're not taking advantage. They're not taking advantage of their own skills on the Creative Cloud side, right? To really blow the doors off, because again, if they took all these videos and they did do that, let's say took a cinematic approach, a more cinematic approach, they could probably be. This could have been amazing, but because the videos themselves are truly.
I remember driving the car.
You're hearing about people who, one way or the other, are trying to do good as part of their corporate or individual mandate, and that's great. To me, I love that.
Yeah,
have a backup plan.
But I'm not sitting here. It's not like I'm not inspired to go out. I mean, I'm inspired to go out and do good because I'm me, but I'm not inspired to go out and do good because of them particularly.
I love that I still have it,
even though I'm happy they are doing some amazing good.
Yeah, in between things, I actually liked Serena's story. She really got into her, like what she's doing, why she's doing it.
Yeah.
I thought that was really remarkable. Of course, me being the startup guy, right? So the investor guy, I'm like, I really am fascinated in how people are thinking about how to leverage their, investments to, bolster multiple goals. And she got really into some details. So I'm looking forward to certainly going back and listening to it again.
No better brand.
It's kind of too bad they didn't do that one as a Q&A, because I think that's honestly that's where that spontaneity comes through, and that's where you get a little bit more of that sense of drive. Because I agree with you, and I've seen a similar conversation with her in the past, and it's super riveting, honestly, to hear her talk about this stuff.
Raj Subramaniam,
Totally, yeah, absolutely,
President
agree.
And Chief Operating Officer of FedEx Corporation.
I feel like we're like the film critics from the Muppets.
No, this is Mystery Science Theater 3000. It's the front of our heads instead of the back.
Yeah.
It is my absolute pleasure to welcome the President and COO of FedEx, Raj Subramaniam, to Adobe Summit. FedEx has clearly been mission critical in connecting people with vaccines, tests.
Just got 2 packages from them today
during the pandemic. Welcome, Raj, and thank you for joining us.
Seriously, the lifeline in COVID time.
It's been terrific to be here. and participate in the summit, and appreciate your inviting me to do that.
You know, the whole world, Raj, has been talking about working from home, but the reality for FedEx is that probably never was an option. But what has it been like as a company on the front lines?
I'm immensely proud of the FedEx team over the last 14 months. We have delivered more than 2 billion masks, and we have 80 kilotons of PPEs and 9,000 relief shipments around the world in this time frame. And to be able to do all this, of course, we rely on our 670 aircraft and 200,000 motorized vehicles. But the most important asset is our 600,000 frontline team members.
We all know that these crises create business opportunities as well. And maybe you can touch a little on how FedEx has used this moment to create new business opportunities that were perhaps unexpected just a year ago.
Well, I would say a couple of things. One is really regarding the resurgence of e-commerce. Actually, I'll draw back to a time frame like May 2019, well before the pandemic, that we decided that we're going to double down in this area. And we decided to go from a 5-day network to a 7-day network. That sounds easy, but anybody who runs the network will tell you that's a big step change. We decided to go into delivering inside people's houses, very big things like washing machines and things. We decided to insource a lot of things we sent to the post office. So we made all those calls, with the bet that the market's going to come our direction. But it was a bet. So when the pandemic came along and people stayed home and we were delivering everyone's personal supply chains, aka e-commerce, that market really boomed. And in the pandemic, just
interesting choice, resurgence of e-commerce. I mean, I thought it was growing right into it and just took a hockey stick approach.
Yeah, I know. I agree.
It's an IoT device. So
I think it probably meant acceleration of e-commerce. Maybe.
In addition, we launched FedEx.
I think part of what's changed is the amount of business-to-business commerce that's happening and being delivered through these big channels too, right? I mean,
millions of vaccines.
That's actually a huge part of the shift.
So it's been
he made a really funny point or an interesting point, which was that they're now delivering things like washing machines, and which is
I understand that.
That alone is a whole logistical nightmare of a problem to figure out how to handle it. Because you're dealing with something 5-10 times the weight of what you're used to doing.
Innovating digitally actually means for your business.
You delivered a chair to me that's 50 pounds today.
In our DNA from the very get-go.
And that's nothing compared
Chairman
to a
and
washing
founder
machine.
Fred Smith talked about the information about the package being as important as the package itself. Now you may look at that and say, that sounds okay. But he said that in 1978. And in fact, launched at that point tracking and tracing for the industry. And when the internet came along, we were literally the first application on the web. So the technology and the technological DNA has always been part of FedEx. Of course, well, looking forward, we truly believe that we can use that foundation of our physical capabilities, but really leap forward on the technology side. And every day we transport about 20 million packages per day. And each of those packages is scanned 20, 30 times. So literally, we're sitting on these global supply chain data. So, we want to be able to have a data-driven company here, a data-first company, where we can take advantage of that data to provide unique value for our customers. You should think of it as logistics intelligence.
Tell me how.
That we can provide our customers.
I really want to know. I really want to know.
Today, Adobe and FedEx have announced a partnership to enhance the commerce experience. So maybe you can just tell us a little bit about, from your perspective,
this is actually kind of
what this partnership means for your customers.
Weirdly and interestingly amazing.
Targeting a small.
It's the Adobe FedEx Narvar equivalent. Is that
ecosystem? And with the Magento platform, combined with our shop runner platform and the FedEx logistics intelligence that comes with it, you package it together. There is a great opportunity for small and medium merchants to really prosper in e-commerce. There's been a clear need in the market because you want to be in an open ecosystem, and they want to be able to control their own destiny, so to speak. And so this is an opportunity for FedEx and Adobe to partner together to create that platform. So I'm really, really excited to move forward here.
Thank you, Raj. for being with us and for sharing your thoughts.
So I'm super intrigued by this because I don't know about you guys. One of my personal pet peeves over the last year has been you get an estimated delivery time or a specific delivery time, and that just goes to hell in a handbasket between the time that you order something and the time it actually arrives, if it arrives. And it's interesting because all of this stuff kind of points to a whole bunch of other supply chain and operational challenges that.
So it's a data integration issue, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and a lot of businesses haven't tackled some of that back end operational stuff. So love helping small businesses and medium-sized businesses on the front end, but you gotta help them tackle some of those operational problems on the back end, or the customer experience is still frankly pretty crap.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, Amazon thought about that very early on when they said, "Oh, hey, we've got this great storefront for you all, but what about the rest of how you operate in the first place, right?"
Figure out
change
the
their
fulfillment
entire
yourself,
game.
right?
That's right.
Navigating these critical.
Well, but part of it too is like, if it's going to be 2 weeks, don't lie to me and tell me it's going to be 3 days. Tell me it's going to be 2 weeks, because then I'm at least making an informed decision. But try to give me an accurate estimate.
You'll see but if I've got an automated system that's telling me 3 days, it's only as good as the data that's fed into the back
going
end.
into it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of the program.
I almost hate to have to break in with the music, but
don't do it.
Exactly. It's Adobe visual effects time.
Wow. Okay. So that was interesting from my perspective, but I want to hear each of you overall assessment of that. Whoever wants to go first.
Save the population, save the environment, go for DEI. I think Adobe wrapped up 3 good stories. I would have liked to have seen more energy and a little bit more about what Adobe's doing. There's a way to package these up in a way that represents and differentiates Adobe, and that's the one spot that was lacking about, I think.
The other thing that struck me is, Adobe has a really diverse customer base of businesses, all different types of industry sectors, different types of sizes. And this was very much about, big corporations, changing the world kind of thing. And it might have been nice to have had a little bit more diversity in that, in terms of, some of the businesses that are maybe taking a slightly different approach that aren't necessarily behemoths as well. And maybe we'll get that through the rest of the program. But it was very much, big Adobe customers.
So as Christy and Paul mentioned correctly, right, I totally agree with the idea that if they were going for inspirational, that's exactly what they got, everybody got. I think the other hidden message, and I'm probably reading a little too far in between the lines, is Adobe wants to go deeper with companies, right? They want to be involved in more of the operations, which we were just talking about, organizations needing to get in there, either to be sticky in order to expand, in order to, explore new arenas that they can go down that particular path. So I think if I were to tie something together, it's Adobe can go deeper with you than just a website or a front end or a front end experience.
Wow. Yeah, and I think that's a successful message too, honestly. Because this stuff is hard. It's not that easy.
It's hard. Right.
The other one too is it's great to talk about new and innovation, and obviously that's really important. But brought to you by Adobe, the company that brought you the original web analytics. The fact that Adobe has been doing this for a long time from the ground up and doing it well sometimes gets lost in the overall message.
Yeah, and I think, again, it was +1 to, I guess it would be +3, right? And actually including some of the comments, +4 or 5. But look, I'll put it this way. Adobe, one of the things that we were kind of talking over a little bit was a lot of the announcements that they made. And they did make they actually made a substantial number of product announcements in a very short time, probably too short. Weirdly, I mean, let's say this. If I'm looking at this as an event, forget the content for a second. It was very weirdly imbalanced, okay? I mean, meaning Adobe's historically, they've been too product centric. They literally went the other direction with this, and they emphasized it with the customers, which I'm very glad. I mean, personally, because I'm so right-brained, I'm very glad to see that anyway. I mean, I was glad to see the way they did it, why they did it, how they did it in that regard. However, that said, they then took the product announcements, bifurcated them from the other part, and then compressed them into a really short, like, here's, and I'm sure with the admonition or the comment that, you know, you can learn more about the products in different sessions over the next 2 days, which are power packed. But the event itself, you know, did lack that kind of cinematic punch, and at the same time lacked thus the deeper emotional engagement that you kind of want with it, because ultimately the value of, look, a year from now, how many of these announcements are you going to remember actually occurred at this event? You might remember the fact that the customers who were very inspirational, and I don't know if Serena Williams is actually a customer. I mean, as far as I can tell, she's a hired speaker, right? But you'll remember them, and you'll remember how you felt when you were watching it, right? And that's what you'll remember, and that's what the value of most of these events are. I don't think Adobe did a great job there. On the other hand, from the standpoint of doing what you need to do to show that you're a company aware of the 21st century and where it's changed and how it's moving, and they did it all. And I don't think they did it for marketing purposes purely. I mean, they you know, some companies do, but they did
not their own, for their big
really
clients.
do care. Well, no, they really do actually care. They want to help, right? And so that's why Pfizer is obviously the, you know, the marquee, even with Serena Williams and Deborah Wall. But Pfizer is the key. You know, was the whole key to it. And they let him speak the way he needed to. So I'm hearing an echo now. Wow, that's a heavy one. In any case, I'll be quiet from there. So I think that's actually the event itself was problematic. The content was good. But the bifurcation of like time and effort was kind of odd. It's like power compressed to this product and vastly expanded to the, let's call it the right brain. And there was no, as a result, it just seemed a little off.
I have to say, I'm a bit disappointed in the overall feel. After last year, you know, we kind of gave them a pass because of all that took place. So maybe my expectations were a little bit higher for more of a cinematic feel to this. I said that the stories I think were really good. I don't know. I just didn't feel them like I was hoping to. You know, like you know, when you're sitting at a 10,000, you know, seat arena, and I think that probably would have played better if we were all there together, you know, sitting in that big room and seeing them up on, you know, on the stage, so to speak. I think it was disjointed highly.
Yeah, I feel like it was disjointed in a way. You know, there's a way to bring them together visually, thematically, certainly with showing the power of the Adobe platform, even in a virtual format. And maybe that wasn't quite there. It seemed like 3 separate conversations or separate videos.
Maybe, but they were produced separately, right? I mean, yeah, funny that way.
Has anybody done it really extremely well?
I was going to say, here's the thing for me. I've already been to Domopalooza this year, and I got to say, just like last year, they pulled it out of the bag. They set a standard that I personally don't think I've seen anyone else meet, and it's hard to compare favorably to that, quite honestly. And for me, Adobe didn't. I mean, you know, what Domo managed to pull off was a combination of pre-recorded stuff, some live interaction, but just an energy level and in the customer stories and in the presentation of what they're doing and how they're doing it and what's new. There's this just tremendous sense of energy and momentum. And this was, you know, I mean, you go down all the points that were covered here and the stories that were incorporated, and there's a bunch of really, really good stuff, but it just it left me a little bit cold. I'm with you, Brent. I was, Adobe is known for so much creativity, and it just didn't come through. It didn't translate.
Yeah.
The one thing about the videos were, I was just going to say one thing about each of the videos. I think they were all a little too long. I mean,
Rebecca said that too.
I just had this really good conversation with Tyler Lessard over at Vidyard, and they just did this state of video and business report. And if people are making videos like 2 minutes or less, and you've got a chance to keep them, those things that's way too long. I mean,
I'm just gonna say, look, I live in Southern California. We have a bunch of out of work producers who specialize in this stuff. Go hire some real talent that understands how to, structure and edit this stuff. It will be to your benefit. I'm somewhat facetious, but I'm at least half serious. Like, that's what it really comes down to. It's what you were talking about earlier, Paul. This is a cinematic era. Get some of that talent in, because this is a totally different kind of production than what you do in a big room.
From the standpoint of, two things. One, from the standpoint of Adobe itself, if you caught wind of some of the things they were doing with the products, they actually are still doing a lot of filling out their actual platform in a really good way. And they really are. That's one. On the other hand, what I would suggest is the conference.
Don't mind me. I'm just
okay. The conference we have high expectations for still. Based on both last year and what apparently they're going to do this year, which they won't tell us, is Pega. Pega mastered time last year. They had no track over 10 minutes. Alan Trefler did a 10-minute keynote, right? I mean, it was short and to the point. And it was Don Sherman, their CTO, was the one who made that comment about going cinematic. And Alan hinted on our episode last week that, in fact, they're taking that to heart, right? Because look, we're living in a world basically not only governed by, ADD. All of us are getting ADD in the course of being home because of all the things going on around us. But we're living in a world by the fact we have multiple tabs open at all times that we're shuffling between on a browser, right? So it's not like, it's just like we'll just have short attention spans. We have 100 tabs. That's why we sign up for 5. Well, I do. I sign up for 5 conferences at once, right? Right. I do. I mean, I'll sign up for 3 conferences simultaneously, and I'll flip between them because I can. It's very easy. There's a tab.
Well, you think about it. When you're going to a live event, you're there. You're immersed.
Yeah.
There's more opportunity for them to keep your attention and for a longer amount of time. But when we're all sitting in our individual work from home stations, like I've got like 5, 6 different screens shooting at me at any moment, and that's why I wanted to put this thing up. This tells a kind of a big story here. If you can get your message across in a video, the shorter amount of time, the much more likely you're able to capture them than they receive the whole message. I think that all these companies have to start thinking about that. Remember last week? Was that last? Yeah, it was last week when we talked to Alan Trefler. The first thing he said is, they made sure we tightened this thing up. I wasn't going to be talking for 30 minutes. And they were so right. Don and Sherman, and I think he mentioned Mike Brenner too.
Mike.
Yeah, they
Brennan.
Yeah, they enforced this whole idea of you got to keep it tight, you got to keep it moving, and you got to keep their attention. And maybe it's just us because we sit through a lot of these things. But I was just a little disappointed because I didn't feel any energy, although I felt some good stories and some good insights. They weren't delivered in a way that I thought Adobe would be able to deliver.
Right. If I could provide maybe that wasn't necessarily a priority, right? I know it sounds crazy, I mean, both.
Are you saying they weren't trying to cater to the analysts watching this thing? Is that where you're going with that?
But are you here as an analyst? All right, let's put that as an ICP, right? So if you were an analyst, are you really concerned?
Wait a minute, I'm not sure if I'm down with ICP. So
it's the ideal customer profile. Sorry. So ideal customer profile. I'm sure there's a lot of other terms for it, but let's say they were looking to cater to analysts. Paul is talking about, I've got 5 tabs open watching probably 3 different events. And maybe, and Brent is saying, maybe I just need to condense my message to a shorter piece. However, we all are default by for an hour long kind of, type of engagement or a meeting. Maybe it was designed to just knock out the announcements in the beginning. You get to pay attention to what those are, and then the rest of it you could hear behind the scenes, like an NPR show or something. But maybe that's it could be a different approach.
They need to hire the NPR folks, because those folks really do tell great. I love getting in the car and going to NPR because their stories keep your attention.
I don't think this is an analyst thing, really. It's just a human thing. None of us, and I'm pretty well, I'll say this with a reasonable amount of certainty. I'm speaking for a majority of at least the online world. Okay, when I say this, none of us have the attention span we have in when we're actually in an event versus when we're at home. None of us. We just know. I mean, and that's not even like an amazing point. I mean, it's like very obvious. Distraction and diversion pretty much drive everything we're dealing with all the time. And that could be an ambient noise that's coming from a room across the hall or the dog bark, right? So whatever it is. And so
I could be in the middle of our show and I'm like, what just happened there?
Right. Well, you started the Gilmore Gang hugging a football, remember? Right. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's just the world we're in at the moment. And you have to look, again, Pega did it right. They didn't cater to analysts. They had, 15,000 people on their at PegaWorld last year. But they understood people when their results were off the charts, right? Again, it's just a matter of how much attention we're willing to provide and how much involvement we're willing to have with something. Right. And those somethings and how much interest we have in the diversity of those somethings. Right. Because, I don't want to spend an hour on one subject watching a conference. I really don't. And a keynote is never one subject. It's 20. It always is. Look, every keynote you ever watched in real life or online is more than just the speech by the CEO. Look, Salesforce, when they did when they do the Dreamforce keynotes, Mark has 75 things going on in that keynote. And now that's in real life, and he's high energy generally, so everything's high energy. But even so, you watch keynotes online. Some of there have been good ones, right? So, you have that diversity of and that constant movement and the constant activity, and it emotionally grabs you and then you also feel something from the participants too when it's like, look, I am a monster Serena Williams fan. I'm a huge fan of hers. I've been it was to the point where I would literally choose between her and her sister, right? And I would always go with her, right? It was like that much of a fan. But she was just doing the thing she was paid for, and it was good, and it was inspiring that she's doing the work she's doing, and I think it's important work. But it's not like I wanted to go jump in there and help, right? First of all, she didn't need it. But secondly, it's just, ultimately, the only job that they have in the keynote is to set a tone and a theme. That's really the only job of a keynote. There's no other. You can't, like I said, I think the product announcement was a little too compressed, but you cannot really to your point, on it's not like you can build out each thing. It's ridiculous. That's for other things to do. But, I'm just saying, the thing with Adobe that was a little off kilter was it was just imbalanced, right? That's all. When I say imbalanced, I'm not saying perfect balance is what you need, because you don't. Yeah. But it was not. But because it wasn't well integrated, it then thus seemed kind of out of kilter a little bit. That's all. But on the whole, if you look at the products they announced, they actually were announcing some really important things to their platform. If you listen to the stories they told, they said Adobe's perfectly aligned with the world as it is and where it's going. And it did say that. The only thing they missed was the actual, let's call it, they got content creation down. They missed, they missed distribution and consumption a little bit, right? But they got the creation down. They had the right content, just the wrong distribution of it, and the poor means to consume were set up kind of badly. And that, so again, I was not saying it was a disaster. It was far from it, but it was actually, and it was really a lot of really interesting and inspiring things. But there's a lot they could have done a lot better, especially when it comes to just the nature of 21st century or pandemic and evolving post-pandemic events. And they're going to have to learn how to do it better.
The medium's the message, right?
Yeah.
Well said.
I will say to their credit, it was 1 hour and not 3 hours, which we have on that.
And it looked great.
Exactly.
I mean, everything looked like, TV value in terms of
which
all
is the other
videos
side of it.
and
Broadcast.
I mean, it looked great. Looked really good.
And that was a big improvement over last year.
But
That was
the
a
other side.
huge improvement over last
You know what? If you know what, I'm of the mindset, and I'll be quiet after this, but I'm of the mindset that if these companies start thinking instead of live stream or things like that, they start thinking broadcast, right, and cinema, they'll be better off. Not live stream. They don't do a good job at live stream. They never do. That doesn't mean not live events. I mean live streaming as a medium per se, and start thinking broadcast TV and start thinking cinema. They'll do and movies, basically. They'll do way better at what they do, because that's, to me, the fascinating thing I'm seeing is people are looking at things as broadcasts more so than live streams.
And separate out the channels too, right? So I do my broadcast, but what are those other ways that I engage users in a conference digitally? With chat and those different things that are separate channels, they're equally important for engaging individuals, the networking and all that sort of thing.
And stay tuned for Engage with Paul Greenberg coming in June, which will take care of all of those channels. All of those channels will be covered.
But the other thing that was kind of lacking was just you didn't feel like there was no kind of humor injected into it, no real injected into it. It just felt like, they could have given us a preview of that. I mean, something that livens it up a little bit. It just brings a little more energy to the thing. That would have been great.
I think last year was a complete disaster because they didn't hire anyone. And it just basically became the MC handing it off to somebody who did something pre-recorded. And it was a complete destruction of Sneaks. This year, they're back to where they should be, which is hire a comic, a great one, and then have an MC who does actually understand that. Their MC is really good at that.
They could have given us a little sneak peek of Dan Levy. I mean, do something.
Yeah, seriously, something. Yeah, I know. And the funny thing is, I've even seen Serena Williams be funnier in some of this stuff.
I'm sorry.
Lighter. It was all very kind of plotting.
The video,
very, very serious.
I've seen her have more personality. She almost looked like it was just sort of going through the motions. And I didn't see any high or low. Yeah,
it's like a car commercial.
They would have been better off. You know how when they had Drew Brees and they brought in I forget her name, that from Fox Sports. They could have had bring in somebody that she would have vibed with, and much, still get all of that great information, but it was so straight down the line. It's just, I don't know. It's just
Serena Williams on the phone doing business shot. It's like, oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's like Anand, but like Anand said, what she was saying was very interesting and I think very timely. But it was
have
just
to raise the minimum.
Straight line. There was no, it was just right there. There was no high or low moment. That's, I don't know.
No, I agree. I mean, it didn't have. Look, the funny thing is, Adobe Max was exactly what it should be for a conference. Totally different, and they nailed it. I don't know why they don't take that as a template for this one.
I mean, like, for heaven's sake, have Scott Belsky interview Shantanu or something like that, because they've got the talent, they've got the people to do that internally. They just, for whatever reason, it's a self-seriousness that I think is a little bit of a shame, quite honestly, because the fun is gone. And I think part of what we have come to expect from Adobe events, especially live events, is some fun and some creativity, because let's face it, in a raft of stuff that we all attend every year, it's usually a high point when it comes to, having a bit of fun and, the beach balls in a room or whatever it might be,
Do you think someone
didn't have an equivalent of that.
Sorry, Nicole. Yeah, did you think someone said maybe it was a serious time, therefore we should have a serious tone?
But it was just like last year, it was the same thing. It was
it was okay. See, I missed it last year.
It was even more serious last year, And
we need to wrap up. But one of the conferences I remember the most over the last couple of years was the first Freshworks event, because they had, the CEO and founder Girish, and I can't even try to pronounce his last name, and he's a very low key guy, and very, fun, but very low key. They actually had him on stage interviewing Shaq, and it was so much fun because Shaq helped him out, because Shaq realized, he's such a low key guy.
Straight man.
I'm gonna have fun with him, and it became. Laughter was all throughout. There's like 5,000 people there. They could have used a little of that. I mean, just to bring some life into that would have been very helpful. I don't want to, kill them for everything else, because I thought a lot of good stories in there.
If we put the event as an event aside and look at the content of what they announced and listen to let's call it the messages of their customers, they did really well. Actually, I mean, what they're announcing is completely on point with building out the kind of platform that they should be building. And secondly, and secondly, the messages were truly, profoundly good messages. I'm not saying profoundly inspirational, because that would imply massive emotional involvement, but there wasn't any, right? So, but that said, they were truly good messages, and they were it's Adobe doing all of that. That part they nailed, but the rest of it but the way they just packaged it just didn't work.
Great.
All right, guys. Thank you
Adobe,
for the players and residents.
That's my bottom line.
Wow. And on that cheery note, we'll say goodbye.
Okay.
Say goodbye to the players and residents. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, guys.
And we'll see you guys soon on a show near you, right?
Yeah. See you soon.
All right.
Thanks, all.
All right. Bye, guys.
Well, any final thoughts before we let people know what's coming up Thursday?
Nah, I'm pretty well thought out.
I don't want to sound like I'm killing them, because I'm really not. Maybe it was a case of maybe my own expectations were a little too high because we've been to Adobe Summit year after year after year, and it's really been. I remember for 3-4 years straight saying this is the best event I've seen of the conference season. So I really did,
I know you would go, and it was before I started going, and you would go and you tell me about it. And it was like, wow, that's amazing. And then finally, when I started to attend, I was blown away every single time. Right. I was blown away. And they just year after year, they top themselves from the prior year. They just look, again, it's odd because of the quality of their products and the reputation of the company and their intelligence when it comes to building out ecosystems and partner networks and the scope of their actual, efforts. And it's weird when they don't do it right. Right. And so, because there's just they made it into the big five for a reason, and so, their expectations are going to be extremely high. If they didn't have Creative Cloud, maybe not, right? But they do, and it's not only do they have it; they are the industry standard for almost everything related to that, right? So, the expectation is, spectacular, or at least truly engaged and immersive, right? And it wasn't any of that. And that said, the messages were genuinely good. I'm not saying that as some consolation prize. They were important messages. And again, what I did see of the product announcements, and I'm going to dig in on a few of those. They're hitting all the right spots, and I don't think this is going to impact them in a bad way. I just think they could have done better with the event itself.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I already dug in the Workfront AEM combination, and makes a ton of sense. I mean, a lot of the moves and a lot of the press releases from what they've done or they announced, it makes a lot of sense. I guess maybe, a keynote is, I think a keynote is even different now than it is post or pre-pandemic, because the keynote really always has been setting the tone, but I think it's even more important for that tone to be set to lead into all the different branches. Because as people are sitting at home after the keynote, you do want them to go to check out all these different things. And did they do enough for people to really dig into some of these things? I don't know. We'll see. But I'll just say this: I think our expectations, and I'm not saying as analysts, I'm saying just as people stuck at home for the most part, that have a million of options right now to choose from when it comes to what content to give your attention to. It's got to be very difficult for these big vendors to try to figure out a way to, capture at least as significant amount of attention as they can possibly get. And I got to give a certain extent all of them an opportunity to try to figure it out, because nobody has it figured out. I mean, so they're all trying, but maybe just for Adobe, I thought maybe they would have gotten a little closer to that cinematic, opportunity to connect.
So if we're going to do the final grades, I have to split this one actually a little bit, because I have to split between content and event and the actual event itself. Content, I give them an A-. The actual event, I'd give them a C-. C maybe. A C, because to your point, the sets were crisp. The look and feel was great. Crisp. Right. So I'll give them a solid C. But I'll give them an A or A-, A- to A on the content. I'll give them an A- only because of the weight of distribution. Beyond that, I thought the content was exactly what it should be.
Yeah, no, I agree with the content. And maybe the other component that was missing that Pega did find a way to bring into last year's was to bring the crowd into it. You remember they had that live Q&A with Don moderated with Alan.
Yep. Again,
that's another thing that they missed. It felt like it was a very passive watch. You just kind of sat there and you watched the video and you watched find a way to, incorporate some of the audience into it. I think that will help go a long way. So I'm going to go with C. I'm going to say C for that aspect of it. And once again, I think we grade them a little harder on that aspect.
Yeah.
So maybe even a C-, like you were saying.
But again, C to C- is fair. I think it's a C-. C is fair for event, and I think, but the content was exceptional.
Right, the content and the announcements, because we'll roll those in there as well.
Right, that's why I'm including that as part of content. That's all.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah. So A- is, as I said, the only reason I would give them less than an A is because it was so heavily weighted with one over the other. But then again, that's not necessarily a horrible thing. So you know what? I'll make it a solid A for this one, on that one, and a solid C on the other one.
So do we give it overall then? I mean, do we average those? Do we
It's
have to
hard
be
in
weighting?
this case. In this case, it's a little hard because it was such a vast difference. I don't see it. I don't want to call it a B because that lets the event off the hook and underplays the content, right? So yeah. I'm going to keep it. I'd rather call this a AC.
Oh, I can't go DC because that wouldn't be fair.
No.
Although I do like Back in Black and all night long. No, I think I'm going to go the same with you. I'll go A and I'll go C minus.
Okay.
Just because I really Adobe's,
right.
The expectations are a little higher for them in that regard. All right. So you want to tell folks what's going on this Thursday?
Yeah. So for the first time in a long time, we're going to be taking a hiatus. There will not be a CRM Playaz on this Thursday. Main reason is I'll be accompanying my wife to Johns Hopkins for cataract surgery, and and the only day they could schedule it was literally on Thursday. So we are just going to take a break for a week, and we will be back on May 6th. Is that? I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. The first Thursday in May. I think.
In May, we will be back, and we'll let you know who the guest is that day.
Yeah, once we know who the guest is.
That's exactly the point. And so we'll see you in Brent will see you about 11 more times between now and then. When I say that, I mean between now and Thursday, right? Not now and May 6th.
Well, maybe not that many times, but yeah, no, you know what? We've always done the show together, and we thought about possibly doing it without you being there, but it doesn't make any sense to me, man. I'd rather just keep doing it the way we've been doing.
Well, that I think it's us. What can I say? Right? This show is us. It's not me or you. It's us, and it always has been and always will be. So I'm definitely there.
Let's stop now before I have to start looking for tissues. And
that's right. I have some right here.
I'm starting to feel a little moist around the eye.
Yeah, let me give them to you.
Yeah, thank you. And on that note, folks, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
This has been a special edition CRM Playaz Watch Party 2021, and we will see you the first Thursday in May. Oh, wait a minute. I almost forgot.
That's right. No matter what.
There it is. See you guys later.